Hi there guys, welcome back to the Tower Tech. This episode is all going to be about drone safety, where you should fly it and how you should fly it, and this is off the back of the news that GoPro have just recalled 2,500 cameras literally days after its release because they drop like a stone out of the sky. So, what's the issue with the Karma? I think the reality of the situation is they just don't know. So the thing is inexplicably losing power mid-flight. It's dropping like a stone in some instances. The recall is quite an assertive call to arms that irrespective of whether you've had problems or not with your drone, it needs to go back to GoPro. So if you do have one of those devices, please stop flying it immediately. There's an underlying problem with the thing. It is not safe. Return it. I'm sure that you'll get a refund. So I have here the Phantom 4 from DJI. It's a really great product. You would have seen in my last video there was a little tiny piece of plastic that broke off the drone. Now I've had this for a couple of months. That is the only problem that I've had. This is a really safe product when you use it correctly. Now, I must stress the point. If you take one of these up in the air, you are responsible for the flight. This is not a toy. This is considered, particularly in the UK, by the Civil Aviation Authority, to be an aircraft. If you take it up, you are responsible. Now, don't get put off. If you fly this thing responsibly, if you know your local laws and you stick by them, they are boundless amounts of fun, and I would really encourage anybody that's reluctant to do it to start slow but give it a go. That said, there's some pretty dysfunctional things that I've seen. There's lots of videos on YouTube of people doing really irresponsible things with the drone. So let's take a minute to talk about the things that you should do with the drone and then the things that you shouldn't do with the drone. So my first piece of advice, buy yourself a decent product. There's lots of drones out there that are really cheap and you truly get what you pay for. All you've got to do is Google flyaways and crashes and you'll be given endless examples of drones that don't perform properly, that won't hold their position, that require quite a degree of skill to fly. Most of us are going to be hobbyists and amateurs, and we require something with the technology that's going to hold it in place. We shouldn't be completely dependent on that technology, and you should fly the drone safely. Secondly, bit of common sense really. Don't fly it really close to buildings. Don't fly it really close to people. Don't fly over crowds of people. And actually the rule of thumb is if you're not in control of a particular person or property, your drone shouldn't be within 50 meters of it. And that's not, it's 50 meters up in the sky and that's okay. Think about 50 meters horizontally, right? If there's a problem and that thing's going to drop out of the sky, you want it to be able to drop in an area that's safe. So that's really, really important. Second thing to think about, you need to be able to see this thing. Particularly with the Phantom 4 and the Phantom 3 before it, they have cameras on them, they're very good quality cameras. You can see in your iPad or your iPhone or your Android device when it's connected to the controller, you can see what the camera can see. You shouldn't be reliant on that technology, and indeed in my last video you saw there was an awful lot of glitching, poor signal reception on the iPad. Now that's almost certainly related to the patch version. I'm going to do another video about that. But you need to be able to see that device. You need to be able to bring it back through the sight of your eye, eyeball mark 1 if you like, if you lose video transmission. Again, because this is a quality product, it's got lots of safety features built in. It can do obstacle avoidance, it can do return to home if it loses signal, if the battery runs low, but again, you shouldn't be dependent on those things. You've got to be able to see the thing. So that means not flying it behind obstacles, it means not taking it up too high and not too far away. You will have noticed in the last video that I did where I was doing a 360-degree pan around a bush, I didn't go all the way around the bush. Now the reason that I didn't go all the way around the bush is because I wouldn't have been able to see the drone. I wouldn't have been able to have flown the thing safely. Not only that, I couldn't see who was behind the bush. Now, I was in a pretty isolated area. It was unlikely that there was someone there, but, you know, let safety go first, right? Let's err on the side of caution, fly the thing slowly and responsibly, particularly when you're new to it, and let's not create a bad reputation for these things. They absolutely are incredible pieces of a technology that have been born in all sorts of controversy of peeping Toms looking through windows and stuff like that, right? All of which gives a very poor perception of drones. There's plenty of us, myself included, that fly these things in a very controlled and coordinated way that would be damaged, the industry would be damaged by irresponsible flying. Next point, think about the flying conditions that you're flying in. These things have a tolerance to the amount of wind that they can cope with. They are not particularly good at coping with rain, particularly cold, snowy and icy conditions, right? So fly the drone in weather that is appropriate to do it. Back to my previous point, this is an aircraft. So that pilots will not take their aircraft up if the wind is exceeding the rating of the aircraft. The same is true of this thing. So think carefully about when and where you're flying it. Commercial use. If you have not got a permit or a permission in the UK from the Civil Aviation Authority, you cannot use this thing for commercial use. Definition of commercial use is anything that you get paid for. Now, I don't monetize the videos that I make using this drone. That would not be right. I don't have a permission from the Civil Aviation Authority, so I don't do it. I'm a hobbyist and I create the videos for entertainment purposes. So if you're running a small business, if you're doing wedding photography or something like that, think carefully before you purchase one of these things. And indeed, the chap that I got this from, as you will know from my previous videos, got these secondhand, bought this device for a wedding photography business, didn't fully understand all of the laws and legislation that sat around that, realised that he needed to go on effectively a flight school to learn how to fly this thing properly. Do you know what, guys? That flight school's more expensive than the drone itself. These things are expensive as it stands. You're talking about, £1,000 UK pounds for one of these things. The course that you are required to go on in order to get a permission from the Civil Aviation Authority to use this thing for commercial use, you're talking about £1,500 before you've done all of that. So absolutely, if that's material to your business and a sensible thing to do, then by all means, and I wouldn't discourage anybody from doing that. If you're a hobbyist, don't get paid for the footage and the photographs that you take with this thing. Think about the wildlife that could be impacted by you flying this drone. So typically we're going to be flying it in my case, in wooded areas. There's lots of different wildlife, and indeed the seasons of the year bring different sorts of wildlife. So if you think about spring, buzzards in particular are going to be particularly interested in these things. Now the buzzards are likely to attack it. They're likely to see it as an intrusion on their territory. And guys, guess what? A bird flying into a device that has 4 propellers that are spinning in a very, very, very fast motion, that is going to be one very, very, very injured bird. Not a nice situation for anybody to have to deal with. So think carefully about the where and the when you're flying it. Be sensible about flying these things over restricted space. So there's a famous example in the UK of somebody who decided to fly a drone over the nuclear submarine pens, and unsurprisingly had the book. I believe that chap's actually serving time now. So don't fly your drone and take photographs over secure facilities that are restricted. Understand what restricted airspace is all about. Please don't fly these things near airports. The number of near misses of aircraft flying past drones with potential near strikes is doubling year on year. And indeed there was a famous case in the UK of an aircraft coming into land that was actually struck by a drone. So there are loads of free aviation charts that are available online. It's quite easy for you to identify the areas that you shouldn't be flying these things in, and keep the drone flying at a sensible altitude, right? So these things should be no higher than 400 feet. And 400 feet's really high, right, guys? You can get some absolutely cracking aerial photography. Helicopters can fly very low. They can come over the horizon very quickly. And again, you could find yourself in a really tricksy situation. Now, all of that said, what I will go on to say is, if you understand your local laws, if you fly this thing responsibly, you can have enormous amounts of fun with this thing. My whole family has embraced the drone. My kids get very excited, as indeed you will have seen in some of my previous videos, but you'll also see that my partner sits right next to them so that they don't run at the thing. They're not going to get caught up in the blades. They would be considered under control, that they're in a safe environment. So I absolutely am an advocate of these things. This is one of the greatest pieces of technology that I've bought, and as you can well see, technology is a mainstay of not only my spare time and my hobby time, but indeed my professional time. This is an absolutely incredible device, enormous amounts of fun to fly, enormous amounts of fun to take incredible footage and photographs that you just simply wouldn't be able to get with these sorts of things. So please don't be put off by the video that I'm making. My plea to all of you is, if you're going to go out and buy one of these things, be prepared to do some reading, be prepared to do some learning, and be prepared to take it really, really slow with this thing. You'll notice in my how-to guides that I'm doing, they're very slow and incremental, and that's because I'm still learning the device. I don't want to run before I can walk. Take it slow, keep it safe. You don't want to damage this thing either, but most importantly, let's keep each other safe. My last bit of advice is going to be, don't be an early adopter. So DJI, GoPro are going to absolutely hate me for saying that, but don't buy the product the second that it's been released. Like any piece of electronic technology that comes out, there are teething problems, there are things that they discover once the product has been released. There is only so much testing that you can do, and there's always the consumer feedback. If you are an early adopter, you are going to come across all of those problems. You're going to have to deal with all of those problems. The Phantom 4 had been out for 4 months before I even considered buying it. I was aware that the Mavic was coming out. They're broadly the same price, but actually I overtly and deliberately took a decision to buy a product that was a little bit more established in the marketplace, that DJI had the opportunity to patch not only the device itself, but the controller, and indeed are still releasing patches. And it's still not perfect. As per my last video, the reception for the image of the camera on your iPad or your iPhone is very glitchy and not perfect, right? It's entirely conceivable that you could lose that image altogether. So don't be an early adopter. It's always exciting to get the brand new product, but it's not an iPhone, guys, right? This is a potentially dangerous piece of equipment. Make sure that you're buying something that's been in the marketplace for long enough and is established enough that you know that the product is safe. I apologise if I've been overly passionate on the subject. I am very passionate about drones, the industry, and the hobbyist and enthusiast community that it is made up by. Let's fly responsibly. Let's create a good perception and image of the drone sector, and let's continue to show the value and the personal and societal reward that this sort of technology can bring. Look at companies like Amazon, right? They're doing really exciting stuff. They're talking about drones potentially dropping products up, small packages, things like jewelry and stuff you could have within an hour or two. I'm an absolute advocate of technology. Technology transforms the world. It moves things forward. It creates a better society. It lets us discover things that we didn't know about. We should never be afraid of technology, but we should always, like all things in life, we should be very respectful of technology. We should make sure that we're in an informed and educated position before we choose to use those things. So don't be afraid of getting a drone. Follow the advice that I've given in this video. If you've got any questions, then please, by all means, put them down in the description. I will do my absolute utmost to answer them. If I genuinely don't know the answer to your question, I won't make up an answer, but what I will do is I'll go and find out for you. Let's keep the drone industry afloat. Let's keep its reputation positive. And GoPro, not helpful, guys. Really not helpful. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's been informative, but I do hope to see you in the next one.